All right. Welcome back to
the
Great Imposters Podcast.
That's
This
the
is
one.
funny because
That's the one.
Yep, that's the one. That's what we're on. You know, Joelle and I just constantly doing the podcast circuit. You know, everybody's inviting us on, so we were just confused for a second. This is Annie.
This is Joelle.
And if you're new here, this is a podcast started by two friends who were like, let's just do the damn thing. Let's get over our imposter syndrome, do the thing we want to do, start a podcast because why not? And it's important in life to, you know, do the things you're excited to do. So we have conversations that you have in your head on this couch.
Oh, yeah.
With each other.
On this couch, maybe another couch. We don't know.
Many couches. Started at the kitchen counter with one microphone, and now we're here.
Started from the counter, now we're here.
Started from the counter, now we're here.
Love it.
Yes.
We have a really exciting episode today. It's actually our most requested topic.
I know.
Right?
So this episode is about motherhood. And it's for those that are already in the throes of motherhood and also those that are considering motherhood and those that are expecting. It's for everyone. But what's so interesting that it was the most requested is that, remember when we first started talking about wanting to do a podcast?
Yes.
And I was like, I wish there was a way to do a whole podcast series on like how to raise kids with the appropriate level of adversity so it's not like abuse, but they're still like funny and interesting kids.
Right.
You know?
You're like not coddled.
Yeah.
But like also not horrible to them.
Right. Like you don't have to raise them in Ohio to be cool.
Right.
Know?
Right.
Like what are the tips? And remember you were like, I don't know if I want to do.
I did say that. I said I wasn't sure. I just feel like there are so many parenting podcasts that I didn't want to become a cliche because Annie and I met in motherhood.
Yes. We met in motherhood.
I would say most people that are in my life now, I met through motherhood.
Yeah.
And it's all great, but I guess I didn't want to just be another motherhood podcast.
Yes. And because I feel like when you're, spoiler alert for some of our content in this episode, like when you are a mom, you are craving identity outside of motherhood.
Correct. And that's another reason we started this. And Annie and I would say, have a really good balance of motherhood and other identity. But I think I'll speak for myself. I wanted to resist the topic for as long as we could. But then once we started going on it, like enough people were like, we want to hear your thoughts and your like everything. Yes. We want to hear the banter queens banter about motherhood.
Yes.
So here we are.
Here we are.
We're doing it. And
we're doing it.
There's no way. The other thing too is it's like motherhood is so broad. It's like, how do we make one episode about it? I don't think we're going to. I think we're going to have multiple.
Yeah.
So this is going to be our start. We're really excited because it's something we know a thing or two about.
We do.
So like any other episode, we're going to start with an icebreaker. This time Annie did prepare for it. She also came up with it. We were talking. I feel like I've brought up Little Red Market on the podcast a few times. It's the new coffee shop in Belmead if you're local to Nashville. And it's our new juju spot.
It was good juju.
Because we sat there, we planned this episode, and like so many people walked in that we like kind of knew, didn't know. Yeah. People were like, what are you guys doing? We're planning for your podcast. We like got some new people to listen. Yeah. It was a good moment when we were planning this episode.
It's a very cute little coffee shop.
Yeah.
In an area that desperately needed a coffee shop too.
Correct.
Because Nashvillians, I have a whole theory about how Joelle and I, well, not so much you, but me especially, lives in like a very serious kind of coffee Bermuda Triangle where like there's not a lot of options other than Starbucks.
Right.
And
No, I'm in a very good.
I'm from Seattle, so.
Yeah, so she's a coffee snob.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, we are going to talk about motherhood. Our icebreaker, going back to that, was number one. This is going to be a very superficial question to start us off, but it's fun. Number one product that you have, I guess, that you would like swear by in motherhood, like the number one product you can't live without. It's such a hard question. It's such an open question.
Yeah.
And just to orient ourselves, we have between us, we have 5 kids. Annie has 3. I have 2. My oldest is 7 and Annie has the youngest who's 2.
Yep.
So that's kids are between 7 and 2 and 7. And that's just, so we don't have any products that are like in the teen years yet.
No.
All right. I'm going to go first.
Okay, go.
I actually thought of it like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, so you didn't prepare this time?
No, I did, but my correct answer came to me 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
So I will start by saying I am a formula mom. Oh my God. What a beast.
So are you going to say like formula?
No. I'm going to say
that doesn't count.
The baby Brezza.
Oh my God. Which you gifted to me.
after I was done with it for Cal.
Yep.
The baby Brezza, if you plan on doing formula, even for like a week, okay, this is what I'll say. With my first child, I did not have a baby Brezza. With my second child, I did, and it was a difference in the quality of my life.
Oh, I was on my third child at the end of even bottles, and Joelle was like, "Hey, I'm cleaning stuff out. Do you want the baby Brezza?" And I was like, I mean, I've never used one. I guess I've gotten this far. And then you were like, "No, it's great." And Andre and I, it was so like there was a grief that we had not.
That you had to, no, you wasted like days, accumulative days of your life.
Days
warming up bottles, shaking them up, doing the. If you ever plan on formula feeding, or if you have a woman in your life, a sister, a cousin, buy it for them because it's actually severely underpriced
for what
it is. It's severely underpriced.
Severely underpriced. So I kind of also changed my answer.
Okay.
I was going to be like funny and say that I personally couldn't live without processed foods because like snacks, like
readily available snacks.
You need a bar. You need a bar. Oh my God. Like, especially with Cal, like the third, he is pretty much placated with some kind of packaged food,
at all times.
Yes. To survive. And then I was like, that's not that funny. And like, yeah, you should feed your kids, stuff other than processed food, obviously. But I would say the baby carrier, like the
one that you on your chest.
Yeah.
I love those.
Yeah. Like you need the one on your chest for when they're a newborn. My favorite brand was Solly Baby.
Me too. The wrap.
So good. SOLLY.
The reason I loved it is because it's such a finite amount of time that you get to baby wear.
Yes.
And it's so sweet, and they like just sleep on your skin, and it's like it is a blip of radar of time, so do it as often as you can.
Yes. And if you're going to have multiples close in age, like you need it. You need it to survive. And then when they get bigger, chunkier, a little more stable, Ergo Baby was my favorite.
Yeah, I think that's one I had too.
And they're expensive, but they're an investment. I use the same one for all three. I mean, you can throw them in the wash. Like, they puked on them probably, but
for sure.
You just wash it and boom.
Definitely.
You gotta get the nice one. Don't skimp on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone making your registry right now at Bye Bye Baby. Yeah. Add all of these things.
Yeah. And did you know there's like a designer baby carrier now?
Yes, of course. They're really nice. People really like. A lot of my friends who have babies.
Are they more like ergonomic or something?
Art Pop.
Is that the one? Yeah.
They're just really cool.
They're cool.
Yeah. But people like the way they feel on their body too.
Okay.
Yes.
I liked Ergo way better than I liked Baby Bjorn or any of the other ones. Okay.
Anywho, so here's what we wanted to start with was just an outline of today's episode, an agenda, if you will.
Yes.
So here's what we're going to cover today. So we're going to just start with like our feelings on motherhood prior to having kids and then kind of throughout. So that's going to be just our like entry into the episode. Mm-hmm. We are going to talk a little bit more about our journeys individually into motherhood. So from conception to postpartum, we'll say is the journey into motherhood. We don't have to talk too much about conception.
Yeah.
I think you know how that works.
Yeah.
And then
but can we just talk for a second about how uncomfortable it is when you start trying to have a kid and you're essentially just going around to everyone like telling them that you're having sex?
Yes.
We're trying.
We're trying.
It's like I hate it.
I know. I
hate that part.
It's the most. Wait, one of my friends, she told, I'm not going to say her name because she's going to be so embarrassed, but she was like, we were talking about this and she's like, I was so embarrassed telling my parents that I was pregnant.
Yeah. Confirming.
Oh. It's so funny. It's so true. But I guess more we mean like how long it took us to conceive, that kind of stuff, because that is a really important conversation.
Yes.
So we put up an Instagram suggestion box, and the most common topic to cover in this episode from you all is raising kids with other people's opinions in your ear all the time.
Yeah.
That's a huge topic. We're going to go over that. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to end with talking about the positive parts of motherhood, the things we love about it, because we love to keep it real here. But we do feel like there's enough out there of scaring you from parenthood, scaring you from motherhood, talking about all the shit. Which is whatever. Like if that's but that's not what we want to like. We will give you the shitty parts, I guess. But I feel like you can find that anywhere. We want to kind of get back to the joy.
Well, like everything in life now, probably because of social media, it's all extremes. It's either like people talking about on Instagram complaining that their husband needed to poop today and it took 5 minutes. and like they're so inconvenienced by that because they were with kids all like for 5 minutes.
Yes.
Or it's people that are showing you really unrealistic joy and like really unrealistic depictions of what parenthood is like. So
it's either like a reel with music in the background of just like frolicking.
Yeah, like through a flower field.
Yes.
And everybody's in like Belgian flax linen
And just like perfectly toned golden highlights. Every child looks perfect, like a little model, and they're all just hugging and it's cute and they're picking flowers.
Yeah. Or it's like
that, or I hate my husband because he took a poop today.
Yeah.
There's nothing in between.
There's nothing. So we're going to try to give you the in between.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the in between doesn't always get the most clicks.
Exactly.
But here we are.
Here we are at the in between. The other thing we heard a lot of though that we're going to weave kind of throughout this is you guys just wanted to know like what did you wish you had known before getting into it.
Yes.
So we'll have a lot of those little tidbits.
A lot of that throughout. So let's start with conception. Now I guess I don't know if I want to issue a trigger warning because in our last episode about therapy, we talked about how like
everything has
a trigger warning.
Yeah.
But I know we just want to acknowledge that we know how difficult it is for people to conceive, going through miscarriages. Like our heart is totally like like heavy for all of that experience, and we just wanted to say like we'll say that beforehand. Like if you're triggered by anything when it comes to conception or pregnancy, maybe this isn't the like 10 minutes for you.
For sure.
Yeah. Maybe skip ahead.
Yeah.
Especially because I'll go ahead and say it, Annie and I both conceived very easily.
Yeah.
We got really lucky.
We did.
Both of us got lucky. So I went off birth control. Is this too much? Is this like TMI? I went off birth control and then I never even got a period. Like I just got pregnant with Blair on my first try. And I didn't even realize I was pregnant until I was 7 weeks because I took like so many tests. I don't know if I told you that.
Yeah, they're really wrong until they're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really wrong. They're like negative until they're not.
Yeah.
And I was literally I was living in Arizona at the time and I like threw up in the bathroom and I brought I took one at home. You're supposed to take more than one.
Mm-hmm.
I took one of them at the office and I like sent my husband a selfie of me like with a positive pregnancy test. I'm like, oh shit. And then on my lunch break, I ran to my OB to like have it confirmed. I'm like, I think I'm pregnant. And they immediately sent me back to the whatever ultrasound. They did the ultrasound with the thing that goes in and the probe ultrasound. And they start like
that's actually a thing that I wish I had known is just like how invasive
the first ultrasound
and before the whole pregnancy. Like obviously I knew it was going to be invasive.
I was going to say, what'd you expect?
But like the end of like when you're at the end of pregnancy and all the stuff they have to do, I don't feel like anybody prepared me for that.
No one can prepare you for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just speaking of like our the theme of our podcast, which is imposter syndrome. The only time I ever felt like an imposter in motherhood was the very first second when I like was confirming my viable pregnancy that she like put the camera on like I guess she was showing like my ovary or whatever, and she's like she was like, there's the baby and there's mom, and I'm like, who's mom? Is mom here? My mom?
Yeah.
Like it was. They're like, no, you. Like,
is there like an elder baby in there?
Yeah. I was like, what? It was so, and it was shocking. It was like, and she's like, yeah, you're 7.5 weeks pregnant. I'm like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. So I couldn't believe that. And so that's how I conceived and found out I was like officially pregnant with Blair, who's 7. And yeah, like that was it. And going through pregnancy was it's so funny. I was telling Annie this, and if you know me now, this is very surprising. Mm-hmm. My pregnancy was a secret. I didn't post anything on social media. I was one of those people that like a lot of people post their announcement at like 12 or 14 weeks, like whenever they're exiting the first trimester. I didn't want to talk about it at all because I was super anxious through pregnancy. And it was more coming from the point of not that I didn't care. It wasn't so much caring that people knew and like wanting to be sneaky about it. It was more like if people knew I was pregnant, then people were going to ask me how I was feeling and I didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if I manifested this. I didn't because that's a crazy thing to say. But I ended up during my I had a condition called IUGR, which is an intrauterine growth restriction. So between weeks like 25 to 37 when I was induced, I was at the doctor twice a week monitoring Blair's growth because she was off the growth curve, which is crazy. Now she's like the tallest kid you've ever met.
The tallest.
But it's just basically it's just not to bore everyone, but it's just a function of the placenta not getting the proper nutrients. And so yeah, I ended up having reason to be kind of anxious, and it was nothing. It was just extra monitoring. I had 2 ultrasounds a week for my entire for like half my pregnancy, so it was crazy. It ended up being totally fine. I ended up having, and I will say, stressful pregnancies. Easy conception, stressful pregnancy only in my own head. Like, you know, bodily, I was fine, I guess. Like, it's not comfortable. There's nothing comfortable about being pregnant. I was not one of those people who loved it. I can't understand people who love being pregnant. Like, just like fat, bloated, nauseous, sober, like all the worst things. Yeah.
And so, and going back to how do you deal with other people's opinions? Well, guess what? It starts when you're pregnant. So that
100%. Oh my God. And then that is the worst.
Yes.
That might even be it might be worse than when you actually have the kid.
And everyone only wants to share their horror stories with you. That's another weird phenomenon.
Don't, I'm pointing to both cameras. Don't share horror stories about your pregnancy with a pregnant woman.
Just don't. Yeah.
Are you insane?
Do everything you can to just comfort her and tell her that, like, she's doing all of the right things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see her, like, smoking meth, say something.
Or if someone has, like, a condition, like a popular one is like placenta previa, where popular. That's like it's common.
It's in vogue.
Instead of being like, oh yeah, my friend had previa and she had to have an emergency C-section, and like, just don't say it.
Just don't. Just be
unless it's a positive outcome.
Yeah.
Then you can share that for some hope.
Yes.
Because pregnant women need calm, hope. Anyway, I'm getting off track, but I ended up having, because of my condition, they needed to take the baby out between 37 and 38 weeks because that's considered full term. And that's when they were like, okay, she's not going to grow anymore. And like, she's going to thrive more on the outside. So I went in for my induction. So I got to choose her birthday.
Oh,
and her birthday is St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, that's right.
So I got to choose. Like, I was like, I'm going to have a party baby.
That's fun.
I just thought it was such a fun holiday to have a birthday. Yeah. And it is. So Blair was born on St. Patrick's Day, 2017. And we didn't talk about this before we were going to. We were going to start with, so I guess this is kind of a good time to transition between me and you.
Yeah.
We were going to start with saying just like what have our overall thoughts on motherhood been from like the beginning, right? So like, did you ever like consider not wanting to have kids, like, or what, like when you were younger? So I guess for me, I'll start by saying I always knew I wanted to have kids. I was certain I wanted to be a mom. I think I grew up with, me and my mom were really close growing up. Like, we did everything together. Like, so it never even occurred to me that I wouldn't have kids. Like, I always wanted children. It was like the one thing I was always sure of. So when I held Blair in my arms for the first time, like, I didn't feel like my whole world changed. I'm like, this is just what's supposed to happen. Wow. You know, like I felt so like where I belonged and like so completed at that moment. And then when I went and had Riley, my second, it was a completely different pregnancy, and I almost had her in the car. That's a story for another day. But again, super easy getting pregnant, a bit more of an uncomfortable pregnancy just because of where she was positioned. But really, all in all, I had really great experiences, really easy deliveries, which is I'm so blessed for, because I know that's not the case for most people. And then I held her for the first time, and I was completely overwhelmed in a different way. Like, it's not like you're experiencing the same thing twice.
Okay, that's something I wish people told you. Because when you have your first kid, you're so enamored and in love with them that you don't think you can ever love another thing that much.
Yeah.
And so when you're pregnant with your subsequent children, you're like, I remember my husband, I'd be like, what? Can anything get better than Olive? You know, because your own child is like the apple of your eye. And then it doesn't get better. Like, it's not.
It's just different.
It's just different. Like, your heart opens in these fascinating ways to love multiple humans, and not, you know, you compare them in terms of like milestones and stuff like that, but you love each one of them. So
the same but different.
Yeah. You have space. Like, it's a good lesson for humanity, is like you always have space for more love.
Yes.
But that is a feeling I remember having when I was pregnant with Maggie, being like, how do I, like, I'm obsessed with Olive.
Yeah.
What's this going to be like? Yeah.
Totally. And then I will say, though, I guess to hold some space for those who want to love their second one as much or their first or whatever and don't immediately connect. There's a whole section here on postpartum depression and anxiety
yeah.
like it might take you a minute to connect with your baby. Like it might not always just be immediately, but for me it was immediately with both of them in different ways. So what about you? Like when you were growing up, like what was your thought? Like was Annie always going to be a mama?
No. I would love to hear from some of like my friends from growing up. Just it's got to be I never identified as I was never like a caretaker. I was never very
maternal.
I think people probably are still surprised that I have 3 kids, but including myself. So no, I don't think that I knew for sure I was going to be a mom. I also always used to say that I was going to adopt kids. I've always had this like very, very intense, innate desire for like justice in the world, you know? It gets me into trouble sometimes, but so I always thought that I would adopt. And then when my career, I feel like took off so young, like I was in such serious and intense trajectory situations at such a very young age that I think when I was in my 20s, I was like, I do not have time for kids. I don't, no way. I can't do it. Like, and so then I think that one, it had to do with meeting a person that I was like, oh, I could do this with them. Mm-hmm. That clearly was the turning point where it was like, okay, I could see how, he and I could raise children and really enjoy this and it would work well.
Yeah,
and then
that could happen.
Yeah. And then I think something about like, I always like to get a little dark, like something about trauma too, like the trauma that Andre and I went through in our first couple of years of marriage, the house fire, the estrangements, just lots of different stuff that I think we were like ready to bring children into the world to kind of do better, or like to take what we had learned. So it wasn't until it was literally happening that I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have kids. Because I also got pregnant very easily, luckily, and was shocked the first time. I was like, oh my God. And I was so young. I felt like I was so young when I look back.
We were young in in like today's day.
Yeah.
Even in people are always like, probably not in the South. Nashville's not really like that. I feel like there aren't, I don't know. Like I'm generally one of the youngest moms around in my circles.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm super weird about my age. Like I don't like anyone new to find out my age.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been that way my whole life because I've been in situations where everyone around me is older a lot. And so
Annie was like, I think we had my ages when I had kids was 29 and 31 for reference.
Okay. I think I was 28, 30, and 32. I think
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so just was surprised, had a ton of imposter syndrome. When I was pregnant, I was obsessed with like, I wasn't anxious in the way that you were describing that like something would happen to me. I did feel very like more in tune with myself than I ever had. And then that kind of like grew and increased in intensity each pregnancy and then throughout motherhood. It was almost like the maternal instincts were like, okay, well, we weren't really funneling into your brain, but now you're pregnant, so we'll turn this valve on. You know? So I do remember that very profound
That's very
feeling.
Inside Out.
Yeah. I was like, okay, call in the maternal instinct person. So I remember that feeling really clearly, but what was I going to say? I had imposter syndrome all of pregnancy. I was like, I was insecure about my age. I was terrified about, even though I was surrounded by like powerful, badass women who had kids, at Microsoft, I was like still scared that it was going to impact my career. And so I was sheepish about it. I didn't tell people right away. I waited a while. And I was hellbent. Like, I feel like I was so hellbent on proving something to everybody when I look back. Like when I was pregnant, there's this picture of me, Olive was born on April 8th. And there's this picture of me at a St. Patrick's Day party at like 12:30 at night, because it's like, I had to prove to everybody, like, I'm not going to change. I'm still me.
That's like psychotic.
Yeah, because I was like, that's what I was obsessed with, I think. Was like, no, I'm going to stay myself. And then I was like traveling like crazy for work. I started a new job 4 months pregnant with my first kid.
Right. We were talking about that because I was I interviewed pregnant like before I was telling anyone.
Yeah.
For that new job. Yeah.
So I interviewed 4 months pregnant and they either didn't notice or were classy enough not to say anything. But I also didn't disclose it. That's another thing
Well, if they said something, you could sue them. So
right.
Probably, yeah.
But it's interesting because there's a lot of people, that is kind of a polarizing thing of, do you tell the employer or not?
Yeah.
And I think you don't, because
when you're interviewing,
or when you get before you get the job, or at any time in the process.
No, definitely not.
No, don't tell them.
I mean, I would tell them when you need to like prepare for leave, and they need to prepare their.
But you wait till that offer is fucking inked.
Oh yeah. Oh.
There's not a lot of people that agree with us on that.
What?
Yes, there are absolutely women that would be like, well, I wanted to be honest. You don't need to be honest.
No.
That's none of their business.
That's none of their business.
And again, pregnancy is it's not a condition. It's a state of being. Like, it doesn't change, how you're going to do your job function. So, gosh, I'm really talking a lot. But yeah, pretty much I was obsessed. And then even when Olive was born, I look back and I'm like, I was obsessed with like being out and about and doing things. So I was very imposter in that of like,
slowing down.
I couldn't slow down, and then I didn't slow down, and then that had health repercussions in my pregnancy with Maggie because I was traveling so much for work. And then in true Annie fashion, it was like 0 to 60 and then kind of blow it all up, where I was like so burnt out then by the time that Maggie was born that I almost wanted to like recluse, which was really convenient because then COVID, the pandemic happened, and I was forced to.
That's right. So Annie and I, for context, Annie's second, my second, are both turning they're 4.5.
Yeah.
That's how we know each other. And they were born right before COVID.
Yes. Yeah. So I felt very impostery the whole time. I felt the most impostery in having a third child because I didn't identify. I never thought that we would. And it's funny, like I guess I always assumed everybody would think I was like super religious or
well, usually people who have kids as close. Well, actually, never mind. I was gonna say people who have kids in your frequency or sequence.
Yeah,
it's like you clearly wanted 3 and done. Like you clearly set it up this way, but that's not true because plenty of people get pregnant by accident.
Yeah, there are a lot of accidental thirds. So
yeah,
watch out, guys.
Watch out.
Yeah. So long story short, I am constantly in a state of imposterness with motherhood, but I love it because it keeps me on my toes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's our feelings. So what about, I mean, you kind of went through some of your pregnancy and birth stuff. Anything, what we talked about doing is anything we would do differently in that process, like in the pregnancy or hospital or postpartum process?
Yeah. Well, I had a really intense delivery with my first, where she had a shoulder dystocia, which is like where their shoulder gets stuck. It's the odds of mom and baby being okay are like 50-50, and thank God we were fine. We had this amazing OB in Seattle that got her out with like the second maneuver of 3 that you can use.
Damn.
And so I was okay. Olive was okay. Usually kids who go through that have cerebral palsy because it tears the tendons like in their neck.
Oh my God.
But she was the nerves and stuff too. But she was okay. But because of that, I needed to have C-sections for my next 2 because it's essentially like the anatomy ain't working. So I had to, so then Maggie and Calvin were delivered via C-section. I think I never felt this way, but I heard a lot of women, and maybe this was the crunchiness of Seattle, I heard a lot of women talk about C-sections as this like failure.
That happens all the time.
So like, don't do that.
Don't do that. I mean, in the same way I couldn't breastfeed, in the same way that I like the pity I still get. Oh, you couldn't.
It's like, it's not fun.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I was really okay. Like I knew that I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
And I never felt bad about it until people made me feel bad about it.
Yes.
So I would say that's nothing I would change, but I would say to prepare you, people are going to have some shit to say, especially like when it comes to how you're feeding your child, how you're delivering your child, all of these things. And people also might like, I mean, C-section, I have a lot of friends and I would say 95% of my friends gave birth via C-section. It's not uncommon.
No.
It's like,
look, don't even get me started
super
on like,
common.
Yeah. Like, okay, here's something that I wish I had known or someone had told me. Like, I wish I was as aware of the maternal statistics in this country so that I could have advocated for myself even better. And like, I think about that with, women who are English as a second language, like minority women, all that, like you need to be your own advocate. And I remember something, I said this, I feel like people are going to cringe, but like something I want people to know about C-sections too is like, I had a conversation with my OB where I was like, I want to be really clear. I'm your patient. So like, you're going to save me. Like I had that conversation. I was like, I want to live. Annie wants to live. Like I want, obviously, like I want everything to be okay with both of us, but like I just want to be really clear.
Yeah.
You're looking out for me in this.
Yes.
And I think that's an important conversation to have with your doctor before you go.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that before.
Maybe that's like crazy narcissistic, but
I don't think so. I mean,
well, especially because it was my second, and I was like, I have a living child,
right?
So like, save the mother if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So I do think, you know, you don't need to think of every doomsday scenario in your head, but I think absolutely throw out any expectations of how you think it will go.
For sure. And I do think a lot of times, I have nothing against anyone who wants to like have a home birth in a tub. Like if that works for you, that's great. There's a part of me that looks at those videos of like Hillary Duff having her fourth baby at home in a bath, and I'm like, that kind of looks beautiful. Like I had mine, because I also gave birth really easily. Like I pushed like once.
Yeah, you probably could have actually.
I probably could have done that, but they don't do epidurals in your house. So like, I don't know that I could have done, of course I could have done it because people do it every day without an epidural, but I don't think I would have wanted to.
Yeah.
I just wish postpartum was a little more bougie, you know, like it's just so clinical and uncomfortable. And like, I do think that's a system where I wish it was a little different. Like I like being comfortable, and I would have liked to change my experience like a little bit when I look at like some like videos of people in their hospital room and how they light candles and they bring diffusers. I'm like, oh, that might have been nice to have some aura, some ambiance.
There's so many.
You should bring socks and pillows, 100%.
Socks, pillows, a nice like robe,
nice blanket. But I would like people like deck out their hospital room to make it feel like more comfortable, because I couldn't wait to get out of there.
No, and the overhead lights.
It's bad.
My neighbor told me for my third, she was like, you know, you should bring. I brought a lamp. She was like, I brought a lamp, and there's so many good options for like battery powered lamps and stuff now.
Yeah.
Or chargeable lamps. Bring a little lamp that you can put on your bedside table for when you're like nursing and feeding, so you don't have to flick on all the like hospital overhead lights. Because here's the thing, ladies, every room in like ante, pre, and postpartum is set up so that they could do like an emergency operation in it. And so when you turn on those lights above you, it's like,
yeah,
it's so bright.
It's so bright. It's so uncomfortable. You are literally, the hormones coursing through your body are so like, it's just firing on all cylinders. You're not sleeping.
No.
It's like to just give yourself the best shot at being comfortable.
Yeah.
In the hospital, if that's where you're going to deliver.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have done anything differently about that. I had great experience at the hospital. I delivered at St. Thomas Midtown in Nashville. I will say, going back to what Annie said about being your own advocate, something I would like to give advice for is, you have to be your own advocate, but you're also going through, in Annie's case, or anyone who's had a C-section, you're going through a major surgery, as well as bringing a child into the world, as well as not sleeping. It's actually insane. Mm-hmm. And your partner needs to be ready to be your advocate. Yeah. When we had our second child, I can do a whole episode on why I didn't breastfeed, and I don't really feel like talking about it because it is what it is. But I went into my journey with Riley. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, the shop is closed. We're going to do formula from second one. Yeah. And I know that, especially at the hospital where I delivered, they're very pushy with the lactation consultants, and they do their rounds, and it's their job. They are like door-to-door Cutco salesmen. Mm-hmm. They're like trying to get in there to get the child breastfed. Yes. And
get the breast
to the child. And I'm like, get that fucking psychotic woman out of my room.
And they all like, they're all like in their 50s.
And and they will make you feel so bad.
And their name is like Pam.
Oh,
I love you, my Pam. But their name is always Pam. Sally.
The only like nurse that was like, when I was like, I'm not going to breastfeed, and she was like, cool, was like a new one. Yeah. She was like 22 years old. Yeah. Yeah. But the rest of them are like, especially the lactation consultants, they're going to do their rounds. And you, going back to my original statement, you are literally a shell of yourself. It's so
you're on death's door.
You're like on death's door, right? Yes. So I told, like, literally the lactation consultant came near my door and Chad's like, no. Like, he just like,
love that
it was
story.
great. I'm just like, because he knew, no, we're not doing this time.
No.
And it was the best thing I did because I slept. I slept for 6 hours at the hospital. Riley went to the nursery.
Send your baby to the nursery, guys.
Send him.
Send them.
It's so, if you can.
Because if you get those, I did have a doctor tell me, as this is something I wish I knew too.
Yeah.
I did have a doctor tell me if you can get 3 consecutive hours of sleep, that is what clinically your brain needs to ward off depression. I mean, there's depression for a lot of other reasons, but like clinically sleep deprived depression is from getting less than 3 consecutive hours. And so if you can start your like first 2 days with that baby human with at least 3 consecutive hours of sleep, you're miles ahead.
Yeah.
And so I would say send them to the nursery.
Yeah, because otherwise you're not going to sleep at all. That's another thing people don't really prepare you for. Well, they do, but you don't get it until you're in it.
Yeah.
Is people are like, oh, you're never going to sleep again. It's like, no, you don't get it. Like for the first 3 to 6 months, depending on your kid sleeping, maybe less, maybe more, you literally sleep in like 2-hour increments. It's like, it's not like you will have your first time where you get a 4-hour chunk and you're like, oh my God. I'm Sleeping Beauty.
Like I could have, you get used to it too. That's what's so funny.
You do, but I did and I didn't. Like you get used to how much it sucks.
Yeah, just power through.
You power through it. But that's the thing. And I think this is all to say, like a lot of this stuff, we're giving the advice that was asked for, like what to expect in all of this. But also remember, you're going through all this not to like have a knee replacement. Like you're not going through, like you're going through this to have your child. Like it's all like rooted in a different feeling. So even though it's really hard to get through, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel is your baby.
Yeah.
Like so it's all worth it. It's all like for a reason.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Don't be afraid of this. Like we're kind of just talking about our experiences, but don't be afraid of childbirth. Don't be afraid. Well, sometimes it can be scary, but like
be prepared.
Be prepared. But like,
yeah.
Don't be afraid of all this stuff. Just know there's going to be changes. It's going to be physically really taxing, emotionally, hormonally really taxing.
Yeah.
But it's for your baby. Like you become a parent and there's nothing better in the world.
Yeah. You really do. Your body kicks into this strange like autopilot.
It's primal.
It's primal. It is. But it's real. It's really happens.
Real.
And I know there's like, some of the research says maternal instincts aren't real or something. But again, going back to like the inside out analogy, I do really believe that like follow your gut is the biggest.
100%.
Like for so much of the first couple of years, like, like you need to listen to the little voice in your head that's like, this seems off, or
yes. And always listen to your body.
Yeah.
Always listen to your body. Like I'll talk about really briefly, I won't go too far into it, but one of my best friends of all time since kindergarten, Christy, she, I think I've probably told you this story, but Christy she ended up, like, very long story short, she had an incredibly rare disease that she ended up having an emergency liver transplant and was within an inch of losing her life. And it was the craziest thing that's ever happened. But she wasn't like, she kind of had to like listen to her body to know that something was wrong. She was like turning yellow. Like she didn't realize she was in active liver failure. Yeah. But if she hadn't like gone to the hospital, she'd be dead. Right. Like there's no chance. Yeah. So like you have to listen to your body. If something doesn't feel right, do not let anyone gaslight you.
Yes. There's no shame in going to the OB/ER. We have a friend who is an OB/ER, the lead, and
hey, Melissa.
Hey, and she would say the same thing. Like, I know it's expensive. Like, yeah, that sucks. You do, like, obviously you have to pay for that visit, but like, no one's gonna judge you. Like, if you think something is wrong,
even if you get there and it turns out you're just like constipated.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's
Let
fine.
them give you an enema and go home.
Go home, and like, it's better than the alternative. Yes. So always listen to your body. Always trust your gut.
And remember that your husband doesn't know what it feels like.
He doesn't know shit.
Yeah. So if he's like, you're not, you're fine. Like, you just peed your pants. Like, if your water broke. Yes. Okay. You will know.
You'll know.
Wow. We spent so much time just on.
We did. So the next.
So fun.
It's so fun. We could talk about this forever.
Yeah.
So here's the next piece. And this is what we got the most requests on. We've peppered this in throughout. But when people, like, how do you deal with people giving their opinions at all times, from pregnancy to the way you should deliver to the way you should feed your child. And that's just, by the way, these are just in the first couple months of becoming a mother. It never ends. It never, I mean, we're in the school system now.
Yeah.
It's still happening. What school your kid
I think it's going to get worse. Yeah.
Totally. So the question was, how do we deal with this? And we got that from multiple people. It's, it's like anything when I know a lot of our listeners are married. I would say most are probably married.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when you got engaged, I'm sure the first thing people started doing was telling you how you should have your wedding and like how that should go. So it's that on crack, I guess. Like it's like any other life event on crack of like, or where you should go back even further. Where should you go to college? What should you do with your life? What job should you take? Anything. So, but it's so much more personal because it's the most personal thing that could happen to you.
Yeah.
Annie and I, now I will say I don't want to say lucky because has a lot of downfalls too, but we both moved away from where we're from.
Yeah.
So we don't have that everyday influence of people. Like we don't live near extended family. And I think a lot,
because extended family is kind of most comfortable,
of course,
expressing their opinions.
Expressing their opinions, which, by the way, there are more benefits than not to having family around. It's better than it is not. So we're not saying that, but we just don't have the experience of people breathing down our neck every day.
Yeah.
Of people giving their opinion on parenting to us. But you get it in other ways. So like whether that's, how you should feed, like nutritionally, a lot of it's on social media.
Yeah, and we did talk, we were like planning this episode. I think that's a really important, this is like the 4th or 5th episode where we've talked about the power of unfollowing, but you should, at any stage in motherhood, you should unfollow the parental accounts that don't make you feel good.
Yes.
And that aren't adding to your life, or that you feel are giving you an unrealistic vision of what it's like.
Truly. Like I used to even unfollow people, like going back to our body image episode, I used to unfollow people who just lost their baby weight right away. And like if I saw an influencer go home from the hospital in jeans,
gone.
Unfollow. I can't fucking deal with that. It's good for her. Don't need it in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just not fair to me.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just not fair.
It's like, postpartum body, we could do a whole episode on that. We kind of touched on it in the body image episode, but it's like you have to protect your peace. You are a hormonal like nut job, like in nightmare. Like it's just what's happening within your body. I hate to speak of women that way, but like we went through
it's okay.
It's okay. Like it's just what it is. You have to ground yourself in knowing that that's how it is. Yeah. It's going to feel that way, especially if you continue nursing. Like the hormones are around for longer. Yeah. And it's not normal. You're not on a normal playing field of like your clarity and where you're at. So unfollow anyone or anything that makes you feel bad. And then going into the future, same principle applies.
Yes.
If you like, just don't consume content.
Yeah. Like
that's going to make you feel bad.
When someone is, on social media making their own sunscreen to put on kids, like unfollow them because that's really scary. Like for instance, but, I just think like you said, you have to protect your peace. Every single person's experience is different. Everyone's journey is very different. But the thing with family, because I have very extreme family situations in every sense of the word. And I do get, I've gotten DMs from family members of like, cut your kid's hair and, stuff like that.
Like silly things.
Yeah. And I think people are going to hate this, but like, I think you have to take it all with a grain of salt. Like you have to be confident in the fact that you know what's best for your kid, and that family might think they're being funny. They might be well-intentioned, not in that case. Like
I do think a lot of times it's well-intended.
It's mostly
everything's well-intended. Yeah.
Yes. Like be nicer to your mother-in-law for a little bit. Just know that like she's trying and that's a really awkward situation for her.
Yeah.
That's an awkward situation. When you're the mother-in-law, I do have empathy for mother-in-laws because it's like you're the dad's mom. It's just different.
Yeah.
So like try to use at Microsoft, we called it, I think I talked about this in an earlier episode. We called it MRI, the most respectful interpretation. Try to use the most respectful interpretation as much as you can for your own mental sanity. And then of course, if someone's like trying to go secretly take your kid to like get baptized and you aren't okay with that, then those people shouldn't be in your kid's life.
Did you watch that episode of Young Sheldon.
No.
That happened on Young Sheldon.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, no.
I thought you were like making, because, oh my God, that's so, like both one grandmother was like Baptist and one was Catholic.
Oh, yeah, because a lot of my family...
And they both secretly took the baby to their own church.
Okay.
And the parents didn't want the kid baptized at all.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was really funny.
So, yeah, we've had a couple family members joke about, like, secretly taking our kids to be baptized. And there's a rumor that one of my, like, third cousins in Seattle that happened to.
That's scary.
A family rumor. Yeah, well, I don't know.
Well, if you don't believe in it, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
If you didn't believe it was just a bath.
Yeah. So just like MRI. Think of that.
Most respectful interpretation.
Yes.
Everyone loves you and loves your baby, and they're just speaking out of turn. And, you know, I think the other thing I would say about that, you said it really well, is be confident in going with your gut and knowing what's best for your child. Like, going back to that primal instinct, it's like you're the one who grew the child inside your body.
Yeah.
Gave birth to it. You know best. You know what's best for your child. Yeah. And if you want advice, you ask for it. You ask your doctor, you ask your mom, you ask your friends who just went through it, whatever it is, whoever you decide to take advice from. I will say, though, being on the same page with your partner is probably 99% of this.
Yeah.
Because if I feel like I hear from a lot of folks, gals, you know, like if it's a mother-in-law issue, if it's a mom issue, if it's your own mother, your mother-in-law, your sister-in-law, whatever it is, like people who are close to you giving their unsolicited advice, I think as long as you and your partner are on the same page, it's much easier to do what Annie just said, which is to take it with a grain of salt. Because if you're both aligned, it's like nothing can really permeate that. It can annoy you.
Yes, it's annoying.
It's going to annoy you.
It's going to make you sad, too.
Yeah.
Like some days you're going to be like, am I doing a bad job? And then, like, you need your partner on the same page to be like, no, it's okay.
No, we're aligned on this. And
yes.
So-and-so, like, grandma can say whatever she wants about, like, how kids 100 years ago didn't need to sleep on their backs.
Right. And like, you know, grandma used to also rub bourbon on gums. So like we understand her credibility is just different.
Right. Exactly. You know? So just roll with it. I mean, just do your best to block it out. But I would say like Annie said, have the confidence and be on the same page with your partner. And I think that alleviates a lot of how far that annoyance can penetrate.
Yeah. And I think this doesn't always work it depends on your family dynamic and who you're talking about right now, or who's giving the unsolicited advice. But like there is opportunity too for like an open dialogue of just saying, hey, mom, I know you mean well when you're telling me what to do in this but you know, it's just really, really upsetting me. Can you please stop? And likely that person will be like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that.
But usually what Annie just said comes out like, fuck you, mom.
Yeah, you didn't understand, mom. You sucked, you know? And then they're like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's probably why it doesn't get through as effectively. It's like what you just said.
Yeah. Or you're like, I had secondhand smoke. Like, yeah.
Literally. Yes. And also there will always be comments of, again, and you just have to roll with this. Like, same thing with like, why can't babies sleep on their belly anymore with a crib full of stuffed animals? It's like, yeah, because we all like made it out unscathed, like barely.
Right.
But we have new information, and you're allowed to have new information and make new decisions.
Amen.
And like
there's new data.
There's new data. Like just say it, like anything else.
You could just be like, there's new data.
There's new data. That's your one-liner.
There's new data.
Clip it. There's new data.
There's new data. Or that's what my pediatrician said.
That's what my pediatrician said is so good.
Boom. That's what my pediatrician
Blame
said.
everything on your pediatrician.
Yeah. Gucci.
So we talked a lot about what to expect, what our journeys were, and I feel like we've been talking for 5 minutes, even though it's been like 45.
Which I think is a good point too. Let mothers share their stories.
Yes.
Let mothers share their stories. Like, don't trauma compete to,
No.
I think that happens in motherhood. I think it
lot.
happens in at the very beginning, and it goes back to that, like, don't be the candle blower outer.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we talked about. But let mothers tell their story, because it's the most crazy thing you're ever going to go through in your life. And so like, just sit the fuck down and listen to a birth story here and there. Okay. You'll live.
You'll live.
Dudes too.
Yeah.
Just listen.
I love listening to birth stories.
Me too.
And I love telling mine.
Yeah.
Like,
you want to see a woman glow, you let her tell her birth story. Okay.
Yes. And it's like, listen, it's a war story.
It's a literal war story.
Truly. And even the good, like I had the best birthing experiences, which like I said, most of my friends had emergency C-sections.
Right.
Like my best friend almost died. Like
I had a nurse standing, straddling me with her butt this close to my nose, screaming at me, "Don't move. And then they hit the button and the people came in. But like there's a button on the wall that they hit when it's an emergency situation.
I literally had like, I'm going to say, this is like so, like not self-aware, but I had like the most, like, I had the most like magical births. I really did. Like I literally, it was like push, here's the baby, wah! And then they put her in my like both times. Like I got so lucky. I really did. And I feel so grateful for that.
But people need to hear that too, because
it happens.
It happens. And I know a lot of people that has also happened to.
My births were, my first one was 11-hour labor, which is short.
Yeah.
My second one was like 4 hours.
That's insane.
Like they were quick. They were still really hard. So I can't even like imagine what most people go. It's like traumatizing. So let people talk about it. Just listen. And
the positives. Let's talk about the positives.
So here's what we're going to do. As we said before, when we were talking about our outline of the episode, we're going to end now with talking about the best parts of motherhood, because it's the best thing you'll ever do. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's so hard. And people are always saying it is so hard. Being a parent is so hard.
The just wait.
Oh, don't
be the just wait people.
There's a special place in hell for people who say just wait.
Like this really quick. You got like one rogue hair. There you go.
There's a special place in hell for the just waiters.
Yes. Or the like, well, you have one, or just imagine if you had 3 kids. Like, don't do that, guys.
Don't do it.
Don't compare each other. And yeah, the just wait, like, oh, so many people.
It's a Gen X thing.
You think?
You know how Gen X, like, they don't really have an identity? It's like boomers, Gen X, millennials, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I feel like it's
Gen
always
X is just like everything bad has happened in our generation.
Yeah, or no, it's always because I think it's the people who have like teenagers and young adults.
Yeah.
Are the ones who are like, oh, you have, because there's one boy between us and he's the little one. So we have 4 girls that are super girly and they're so funny and like, obviously they're nuts, but like, we focus on the positive about our daughters and they're hilarious, especially when they're all together. And people will be like, oh, just wait until they're teenagers.
Like, the teenagers, they're going to hate you. And it's like, yeah, they might.
They might. Like, and then they won't.
Yeah. I had my OB with Cal said to me, I think I asked her while I would babble during my C-sections because I was so nervous. And I think I said, like, do you have any like words of wisdom? And she said exactly what we're talking about. She's like, don't listen to the people that make you think that like all the teenage years are going to suck. She's like, my kids are in their 20s now and we've been having fun for decades. Like,
I love that.
It's not all bad. Yeah. But I think the things, so 7 and under kind of positives that we have so far, for me, it goes back to that like sense of like, you have an opportunity to make the world a better place through raising good kids. Yes. And I think that is one of the most powerful things, powerful gifts that you can be given. And it's a very, very serious thing that like makes me happy because you're going to like, I'm going to screw up. My husband's going to screw up. Our kids will be in therapy. They will be mad at us. They will hate us at certain times of our lives. But like, all in all, if you're going to teach them to be kind and to be compassionate humans and to like make space for all experiences in the world, then you're making it a better place. And
100%.
That feels really beautiful to me.
It is beautiful. I'm going to get emo.
Yeah.
Am I going to cry on this episode?
Cry.
Okay, maybe.
Do it up.
We'll see. To be a little more I guess literal about like some things I wanted to go back to. I mean, I have some mushy things too like that.
Yeah.
But you know, as I said, I always wanted to be a mom. Like it's the best work I do. It's my number one priority. My girls are like the loves of my life. They're like my best friends and like my biggest like pains in the ass. But like you have to expect that your kids are going to be a pain in the ass. That's like a given. We were all pains in the ass too. We were all kids on an airplane at one point.
Yes, we were a child on an airplane.
We were all a child on the airplane.
In a smoking section.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I just want you to remember, like, when you're going through because all of our kids are little and they all still cuddle. There is nothing like cuddling with a baby or a toddler or a child. There's nothing like it. It is the biggest serotonin boost that you could get. Like, better than drugs and alcohol. Like, it is just the best. And anytime you have an opportunity to hold a baby, hold the baby because holding a baby is, even if it's not yours, is such a special thing. Babies don't keep. Like, I know that's like one of those things like old people say, but they don't. Like, they're a baby for such a short amount of time, and if you get to hold one, you're so lucky.
And they just ground you in like, this is what life is about.
Yes.
Babies. And
especially
hope.
as people, yes, and as people get older and die, I remember my mother-in-law told me this once, because both of her parents died in a short period of time, and like a few of the grandkids were being born, and she's like, it's the only thing that heals you,
that makes the world keep going.
Yes, it's the only thing. And then going back to what you were saying too, I just was on vacation, like the most epic vacation, with my parents to celebrate their 45th wedding anniversary, my brothers, their wives, Chad, my husband, all of our kids. We have 6 kids between us, ages 1 to 7. And it was just so happy. And it was so like, at my parents celebrating their marriage, it was just like, look what you've built.
Yes.
Like, look what you had children, and me and my biological brother, and then my other brother, like, who are all now my parents' kids. And then you have the grandkids that are all just like they built that. Like, that's something you and your partner can do together. You can really build something. And if you have the longevity to live through that with good health and prosperity, like, you won.
That's amazing.
Like, you won in life.
Yeah.
And I just, like, now I'm getting a little...
I know.
I'm getting a little...
But, like, there is something, like, being on a trip with that many young kids, and just having kids, or if you're an auntie, or you're in any way, like, you get the gift of being a part of a kid's life, like, seeing the world through their eyes too.
We saw the pandemic. People with kids, little kids our age, I believe yours were a little, because you were pregnant too, and with a cow and everything. But I felt like I was the luckiest person in the pandemic, because my kids were too young to remember it.
Yep.
And
we didn't have to homeschool them.
We didn't have to homeschool them because they were still in daycare. Yeah. But they were old enough that we could live through them, and they had no idea what was going on.
They were still little beacons of joy.
They were. They had no. So we got to.
They were still licking the public.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, that was stressful.
Yeah.
But, like,
for sure, because we didn't know it was like what was deathly and what wasn't. Yeah. But we got to experience the pandemic through the eyes of, for me, our kids at the time were 3, 2, newborn,
0. Yeah.
And I felt like that was one of the times where I felt the most grateful in some ways, because I'm like, I am able to not be fully present in the COVID mayhem, because I'm caring for these children that have no idea what's going on.
Yes. Like, oh my God, just like birds singing. Like, your kids will be like, do you hear that? Or like bubbles.
And they say the funniest shit. Oh,
yes.
Kids are so funny. I know that like there have been shows based on this, just like funny shit that kids say. Yeah. But it's true. Like, I've never met a kid that didn't say something funny at some point.
And they're truth serum. Like, we need to listen to them. Or they pick up on more. This can be it's a double-edged sword, but like, oftentimes it's a positive when like they're picking up on a nuance of a situation and distilling it into this one-liner, like, wow, dad seems annoyed. And then you're like, wow.
Yeah. Like, or like Riley, I remember like a few years ago, she was like 2 or 3, and she discovered like locks, like
locks.
Yeah, salmon.
Oh, the salmon.
The salmon.
You did like a locking motion?
Oh no, like I'm like going like that. Yeah.
I don't know. This could be.
And she's like, what is this? I go, it's called locks. And she took a bite out of it. She goes, so it's salmon turkey. Like, she's like, that was just like, cause I don't know why that came to mind, but it's like, they just, like you said, they just distill it into this thought, and you're like, they're so funny and they're so real. And it makes the parts that are very hard, which are very hard, just like
more worth it
and par for the course.
Yeah.
You just roll with it. So we could talk about being mommies forever. I also want to give a special shout out for the people who know they don't want to have kids. Good for you.
Follow that
Thank
instinct.
you. If you don't want kids, don't have them. It's hard enough. It is hard enough to get into fucking private school.
Yes.
You don't need to have kids.
And here's another one. If you don't want to have more than one kid, don't have more than one kid.
Don't have more than one kid. Friends.
Oh my gosh. Like, take the pressure off. You do not need to have kids. You don't need to have kids too to experience what we're talking about. Like, you can be in children's lives and then get to go home at night.
Yeah, good for, and not wipe an ass.
Yeah,
like good for you.
Do that too.
But just don't feel pressured to have kids if you don't want them. You need to want to have kids.
And your partner needs to want to have kids.
Yes, you both have to be all in, because it's too big of a responsibility. It's too big of a it becomes your whole life. Yeah. Until you get some breathing room, and even then it's still your whole life.
Yeah.
So anyway, This has been a lot of fun. We're going to do more. We're just scratching the motherhood service, and this has been a lot of fun.
I wish we could do, I feel like we need to figure out a way to have like callers soon.
I know.
Like, all right, caller, tell us a positive birth story.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think about this episode, how else you would like us to expand on motherhood. We have some ideas of our own, but if you have any requests, we take requests. We're like a DJ at a bar mitzvah. Give us a request.
Oh. DJ noise.
DJ noise. But in the meantime, just let us know what you think. This has been so fun. And this has been Joelle.
This has been Annie.
And we will catch you in the next one.
Bye.
Peace out.